Watch him hit a few balls. All right. So tell me your names again.
I'm Venus.
I'm Serena.
So what'd you think?
So what was one thing I want each of you to go and talk about one thing that you learned from Venus and Serena doing this project.
I think so much. I think both of us learned so many things, but I think one of the most important things we learned was what exactly it was that Serena and Venus had to go through, what exactly they went through. We know them today as two of the greatest athletes of all time, but they weren't always in that position. They had to work for it, and so, it was interesting to learn how much pushback they had when trying to make their way to the top. It wasn't easy for them to get to where they are today, especially them being two young Black girls trying to, make their way up a predominantly white sport.
I feel like, what I love so much about them is how humble and grounded they stayed. They opened doors for so many, not just Black girls, but Black families and people in life in general. People that may feel like they're not heard or mistreated. So I feel like, they set an example for people that, want to go out there and prove that whatever they set their mind to do, they can do. So that's something that I learned so much. Yeah.
Did it inspire you? I mean, how could it not? The whole movie is very inspirational, but what were kind of the elements that really inspired you, or when you were first reading the script or anything like that?
I think really everything about it inspired me. Like, their story just in general is so inspired. Like I said, they were first, and they went through a lot to get to where they are today. It wasn't easy at all. And so what inspired me a lot was how hard they kept pushing and how they kept going despite all the no's and everything else that they heard. They kept pushing and didn't let the negativity stop them.
Yeah, the love that they had for one another too is so important. I think it's very important to make sure you have a positive, support system around anyone in life. But, family is very important and number one, and they definitely understand that. And they're, Venus and Serena's biggest cheerleaders.
I love that both of your characters supported each other, even though, both of them wanted to do this. And so that was really beautiful to see that.
Thank you.
That they were working together. And they kind of come up with this concept of the plan. It's crazy to think, I've got to plan my life. Has this inspired you? We got to write down a plan or something here.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, the entire sport, in general, we both didn't really know tennis.
Yeah.
That's a sport that we had to learn for King Richard.
Yeah, knowing the rules and just the game in general.
How difficult it is.
Yes,
I think we were both expecting it to be something else. We didn't expect it to be as hard as it was.
Yeah.
And so it was a little shocking when we walked out on the court for the first time.
Mm-hmm. And it was like, okay, you and this girl going against one another, go play. And I was just like, wait, hold on, wait.
So I really loved this movie. I cried, and then I laughed, and then I cried, and then I laughed. It was like a great balance, right? And one of the reasons I loved it is because I'm a parent, and I just felt like, wow, this is a great example of being a parent. What were the elements that you kind of took towards when you were reading the script and you took personally that you enjoyed?
Yeah, what I loved is that the women had presence. I love that. And even though it's called King Richard, but the women had presence. Venus and Serena had presence. Miss Oracene had presence. And that's what was the gravity for me with this script.
Oh yeah, when she went over to the neighbor, the whole audience goes, "Uh-oh!" She was a fighter, and I love that about her. Was that something you enjoyed as a character?
Oh yeah, I love telling people off on screen. I love it. It's cathartic for me.
The other thing I enjoyed about her is that she had faith, and her faith kind of led her. It's like, her commitment and with her family, she said. And can you talk more about kind of her faith and how it kind of guided her?
Yeah, I didn't mean to come off cavalier when I said I love telling people off on screen, but what's so great about Miss Orsine is that she presents as someone who's very poised. She is poised. She presents as someone who's very quiet, but then she has these eruptions, and that no one sees coming. And that's great fun to play. That's great fun to play as a character. I love that. Yeah. Yeah.
And, I thought one of the great things, and they say that their favorite part is giving back to the community and like being an example for girls, for Venus and Serena and the whole family. Can you talk about how that's such a great example to give back to the community?
Yeah. What I love about them is that we know about what they do now, in terms of that their work outside of the tennis arena, but what a tremendous work that they did just by being their presence, first of all, but how they occupied space, and coming on a tennis court on this very very white industry, a very white sport, and walking on a tennis court with beads in their hair. Do you know what I mean? It's something that had not been seen up until that point. They were these walking little revolutionaries without proclaiming that, but that's who they were. And so what they've given to us, particularly Black women and women in general, is just this idea of being fully and totally oneself in the course of doing a job, which is incredible to witness in a woman.
So this was an incredible movie. I loved every aspect of it. I cried more than I usually do. I mean, my husband knows I'm not a crier, but this movie I cried, and then I laughed, and then I would cry, and then I would laugh.
Yeah.
So one thing I liked about it as a parent, I just felt that they were great parents who instilled confidence in the children. Can you talk about things that when you were reading the script that you kind of gravitated towards, or you felt like, oh, I want to do this movie because of this reason?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I wanted to do the movie. I thought it was a role that I could bring something to. Working with Will, I thought the story was, obviously it's an iconic, it's about two iconic individuals, but it was so beautifully written that I couldn't say no to this. But what you were saying about parenting, it's one of the things that moved me the most in the story is that while Richard Williams had this vision of his girls being these extraordinary champions, he always did it with an eye toward what it really was about, of giving them, having them own their own power and stand confidently in their own power, as opposed to, achieving because you're being pressured to achieve, or because someone tells you you're good at something and you have to do it. And so in playing Paul Cohen, who was their first professional coach, I really wanted Paul to dial into that same thing. And I found it when I actually spoke to the real Paul Cohen, that very much was his approach too, a very loving approach towards young players. And I was really inspired, the message about parenting that this story has, because Richard and Orsine, placed demands on their children, but it was all about the family being, primary at all times, about humility, about character, and about discovering one's own power and owning that and being proud of that and confident in that. It's a really important, inspirational, message.
Now, how many movies do you see that show this level of success but they're teaching to be humble and to love people and to, give to other people? And that's one of the beautiful messages she says. She loves inspiring young girls. So I love that. What did you learn from the real coach? What did he kind of teach you when you met him?
Yeah, he was great. You know, I found Paul Cohen's email online. I just was researching him, and I saw a link that had an email address. So I was like, oh, great. And I wrote him. He immediately wrote me back and said he'd love to talk to me. And we spent several hours, talking. And he gave me a lot of specifics about his coaching style, even the technical aspects of how he, dissected the game, and he talked a lot about his relationship with Venus and Serena and the family, and especially his relationship with Richard, it was just incredibly valuable. So I learned a lot about tennis, and down to even how I should be, with my stance and how I was holding the racket the way he did, and how he played. So that was just super useful. But the most important thing was the thing we were talking about before, about the way to develop young athletes, because parenting and coaching are not unrelated. And even though Richard and Paul kind of butted heads, they really shared that in common. And Paul had tremendous respect for Richard and his commitment to his girls.